This episode is brought to you by Hayward. Welcome to episode 32 of the Ask the Masters podcast. This week, we're featuring master builder Ryan Oakes. He sits down with fellow master Mike Nantz to discuss his love for the arts and what sparked his passion for design. Stay tuned for this very special episode. Hello and welcome to the Ask the Masters podcast. This podcast is dedicated to discussions about the design and construction of water shapes. The hosts of the show are all certified SWD masters who represent the leading builders and designers within the water shaping industry today.
Well, hey, Ryan, it's good to talk to you today. I'm glad we have an opportunity to sit down and visit and discuss your background, your history, your swimming pool knowledge, and all of the great things, swimming pool related. So usually the way we start these things off is why don't you give us a quick background on your company and when you kicked it off and what you specialize in, et cetera.
Thanks, Mike. It's awesome to talk to you, man. I appreciate you doing the interview. I am Ryan Oakes, SWD Master. I am a partner in Clearwater Construction Group out of North Carolina. We started in 97.
So in 97, that was when you said we. So was that when you kicked off the business, or you had a partner that brought you in, or how did that all start?
Well, I started the business in 97, right out of school. Well, I guess really 98. I finished school in 97, started in 98. So ran with the business for maybe a decade, and I sort of came to a point in life where I felt like I was working really hard and exchanging a lot of money, but not putting any in my pocket. And about the same time, I had a old friend, sort of come across my path, and we started talking shop and decided to come together and work on this company as a duo. And so I brought David Hooper in as my business partner, and we ran from there, man. And that was the magic. That's what made it work. Having somebody like-minded, but different as well. We have sort of a right brain, left brain connection and ability to work together really well. So that's where we are. Another 10 years later, we are a company of two. As owners, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. So when you said you guys were kind of the opposite of one another, so what a little bit about your background and what brought you to the pool business there in 97?
Well, it's interesting. I think it would be easy to start in the 97, 98 era, but I think you have to look at the seeds that are planted in childhood. And my parents were great influences in my life. I think, as I look back now as an adult, I realized that a lot of the things that they did for me as a child really kind of almost mapped out my life, not intentionally, but those seeds were planted, and the roots took. And so, for example, they introduced me to art. We had art in our home. They would take me to art museums, New York, Paris, all around the world, around the country. They had me in art classes, and I continued that through high school and college. And so art was sort of always part of my life, though not with an impetus to be an artist. Just, hey, this is part of your life. This is an important part of being a human. So, that early influence just really took hold. And so that's that, fast forward to now, I probably am the creative driving side of our business, and my partner Hooper is the production minded, hey, here's how we're going to actually make a living at this and not be starving artists.
I got it. So he's sort of, would you consider him being the implementation, and you just, you strike me as someone being more implementation driven, as well as you do have kind of an artsy vibe about you whenever we talk and meet and discuss various things. I get that feel from you, but So you're bringing that to the table, and so what is your partner bringing to the table? Is that just the implementation aspect, or just business operation?
So yeah. This is what's really unique about our relationship. We both live kind of, I think, in a dichotomy. Hooper is very creative as well, and as you noticed, I'm definitely driven and can handle implementation also. But if we so we don't, I've never felt like I'm a right or left brain. I really don't, but I do probably lean toward the creative side without a doubt. And so having those early influences, getting back to that, I grew up watching my dad draw residential construction, retail construction, even make maquettes out of balsa wood. And it was interesting for me as a child to watch him design things, whether they're retail store fixtures or entire floor plans and traffic flow patterns in stores, or a residential house that he wanted to build. And those things were more seeds planted in my brain, and I wouldn't recognize them until I was an adult, but they were there. That was part of my life. And so again, fast forward to now, I drive the design side of our business, and Hooper definitely is very management driven. He makes things happen. It's amazing to see what he can make happen in a day's time, versus me. I may spin out on something and be thinking about the craft and not about getting it done.
Yeah. So tell me about the businesses. I think there's more than one, right? I mean, you've got like two or three different prongs of your business.
Yeah. So, in '98, I started American Pond Company. It was a water feature, stone masonry, whatever came across my table, fountains business. And when David and I pulled things together, we said, okay, we need a name that is more conducive to what we do now, not what we did 10 years ago. And as things have progressed and changed over time, we came up with Clearwater Construction Group to be fairly broad and inclusive of anything to do with water or construction, because that's kind of what we do. Anything to do with water or construction. Along the way, we were growing tired as pool builders of finding someone to do a good shell. So if I may digress on that for a moment.
No, sure, bio. Yeah.
In the early days, we were pumping concrete, doing wet mix shotcrete on our own, and of course had our ass handed to us a few times. It's as anybody that gets into the wet mix business knows. And it was hard. We learned a lot, and we recognized at a point that this was better for other people to do. And so we began subbing the work out. And we continued to sub the work out for a period of years, and we were never satisfied with the work that we were getting from the local subtrades. So we decided to start our own gunite company, and we had discovered through the process that we felt like dry mix shotcrete was the best way to go, or gunite as a lot of people call it. So we said, let's start our own. And it was a huge leap of faith to do this. The investment in dry mix shotcrete is enormous, and we really stumbled into it, quite frankly. And so we started Revolution Gunite, and it grew. And it grew more than we really ever imagined it would, because we did a great job with it. And instantly people listen, people hear, and the pool community is very networked and linked together, whether they want to be or not. As we say in gunite, there are no secrets in gunite. So it's kind of the same way in the pool business. And so people heard about us and started calling. So now we shoot pools all over the Southeast for a myriad of pool contractors.
quick word from our partner, HAYWARD.
I hear that you do HAYWARD equipment, right?
Yes.
You're a full-on HAYWARD guy.
Yes.
So why is that? Why did you choose that line?
I've had the opportunity in my close to 20 years in the pool industry to try just about everybody's stuff, and after using some of the other brands, I honestly feel that HAYWARD stands above them for a couple reasons. I think that they're committed to innovation, so we see stuff coming down the pike. Our company beta tests for HAYWARD on the East Coast.
Oh, you do the actual beta testing in-house?
Yep.
Okay.
So
cool.
we have even a couple products now that we can't talk about because NDAs, but
you'd have to kill me.
Yes. So you would have to burn the building down. In my case, the support on the back end is just tremendous.
And when I have an issue, I need it, and I need it now because I've got an impatient client who doesn't understand weight, and so it's all about service. And so,
and you'll have to agree, nothing breaks at an opportune time. In our case, being in the Northeast, pumps aren't breaking in February; they're breaking in the middle of the heat in July, and people don't want to wait. Everybody's wants to get back up and running. I've also discovered we track our warranties, and we track service visits, and honestly, I don't have a lot. I don't, we're not spending day after day fixing HAYWARD equipment.
So on that, let me ask you about on that fixing part. Are you having to call them to go out and fix, or are you doing the fix in-house with their support somehow?
So we're set up with HAYWARD Service, which is a very seamless process. It's basically a warranty form. We stock just about everything that we install, from variable speed pumps to boards, whatever the case is, and so we fix it. We fix it and deal with the manufacturer second. We're not asking for permission, because at the end of the day, the thing that I believe that I love most is they will do the right thing. Mm-hmm. We've had situations recently where there's lights that were maybe slightly out of warranty, and they've allowed us to install them and then figure it out with them down the road, and they're not going to say no.
Mm-hmm. So how much product a year do you think you purchase now?
I'm going to say that our HAYWARD line will be in upwards of $300,000 for 2019.
Substantial.
Yes. So I think we warrant the support, but listen, at the end of the day, when I was buying $30,000, they didn't treat me any different.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So I think that's important. The automation, the OmniLogic has been a godsend. People love it. The connectivity, it's amazing. The interface, and it's a bell and whistle that we can show through their one of their apps, their demonstration apps. When we sit at the table with a client, we pull up one of their pools on an iPad, and I use my phone to control the demonstration. Mm-hmm. So we're turning bubblers and stuff on that are, I always tease them, that's my pool, it's in my backyard. And, in February they laugh about it, but it's just one of the things that they give us, one of the tools.
Yeah, and so you said earlier, though, that the client seems to be happy and they're impressed. And so is that part of your decision, that the client, or is it more just simply the service, that it's a good product and you've got great service and that's it?
Mike, I believe in the product. I'll be real honest with you. In my former life, one of the companies I worked for was a HAYWARD dealer when I first got involved in the industry. So I'll be honest, when I built my pool, it had HAYWARD equipment on it, and it wasn't 100% a lock and a natural for me to go to HAYWARD. But in that time, I had tried the other manufacturers. The other thing on my side was the area rep at that time had over 10, 12 years in the field, which, honestly, in ththose positions, that's unusual. Mm-hmm. His boss had the same amount of time or greater. I know Mike Massa, who has since left the company. Mm-hmm. Mike had the time. So it was very easy. It was it's very similar to Genesis. It was a family atmosphere of people that all knew each other.
Yeah.
I wasn't starting over with, one of the other brands and trying to develop a relationship. And it shows in what we do. It shows in the product.
Yeah. I guess it's a testament to why you're still a Hayward guy, and looks like going to be for quite a while.
Yeah, I intend to be, and I'm always humbled and flattered at the service we get from them, and the innovations and the phone calls. Hey, could you try this out? Can you look at this? What do you think? We push the envelope a little bit in design and build, so it's not as simple as pointing to a pump and saying, hey, that's going to work. We need to know it's going to perform.
Mm-hmm. So on the innovation side, you sure you don't want to share with what's coming down the pike? I thought I'd try one more time.
The only thing I can share is it's not something that you would see in the pool industry.
Oh wow!
As bizarre as that sounds, So they've delved into something else, and then I believe the light is the best on the market. So and in my mind, when I think of our equipment sets, we're purchasing our electrical set, we're purchasing their light, their automation. And our final purchase order is typically what I would call startup. So if somebody's not going with an in-floor cleaning system, we're going to do the Trivac 700. I think is the best pressure side cleaner on the market.
Cleaner too. Okay.
Entry level.
Yeah.
They've revamped the Trivac. The Aquavac, and they've come out with the Aquavac 650, which reminds me of a angry Dyson vacuum that plugs into a GFI, and it has this cartridge that just pulls out. I just got one to test about a month ago, and it's badass. I mean, I smile and I get excited about Hayward because I really, in my heart, feel it's the best stuff out there.
Well, outstanding. Well, if I missed anything, is there anything else you want to tell us about your experience with the Hayward products? I mean, it sounds like we've covered it. You're not going to tell us anything about innovation that we want to know about that's coming down the pipe.
You'll have to wait for the press release. Thanks, man.
All right,
Awesome.
good talking to you, brother.
Questions.
Where is the bulk of your time spent on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, wow. As of late, and I'll say as of late, as of the last couple years, the bulk of my time has been sort of mired down in construction and design. And to that end, we recognize because Gunite and now PebbleTech, we've recently started a PebbleTech applicator crew, and these things need a lot of attention. So we're in a transition point of moving toward all of our energy going towards Gunite, PebbleTech, and design. I can never see us leaving the design world. It's been part of me from day one. It's just something that's always part of us, and we've expanded and leveraged our capacity in the design realm so heavy in the last few years that we're really excited about what we're doing with design. So to that end, we are sort of winding down the construction, and it's much more of a selective process for us. I've been pretty heavily involved in just a few projects in the last 2 years, and one of which took over 18 months to complete. So that's tough, and that puts a lot of weight on my business partner's shoulders. We have a staff of, I don't know, right now around 50, and that's a lot to manage. So I think as we move forward, we'll see that our attention is much more focused on strictly Gunite design and plaster.
Yeah, so that design element, and so what you mean by design is swimming pool design, backyard, outdoor environment, outdoor living design. Is that correct?
Yeah, so over the years, we've designed anything from residential construction, historic renovations, new construction, transitioned into the outdoors, swimming pools, public parks, any of that. And But by and large, residential swimming pool, water shape construction, and outdoor living. I mean, it is all of the above, and quite frankly, we'll draw anything somebody pays us to, I suppose. But I mean, you would too, right? So
yeah. We all have our price, right?
Right,
we
exactly.
Can be bought.
but that is if we said what's the core business from the design side, it's swimming pool or water shape construction and everything that goes around it. I really believe having the component of what goes around it is integral to the pool itself being a winner, right? You know, you could have the most incredible pool in the world, but if everything else is ad hoc, you know, then it doesn't work. And now this beautiful pool doesn't jive with the house. It doesn't transition. So our focus is, hey, let's bring the outdoors and the indoors together, and the meeting point is the pool area. It's the pool environment. It's where we're going to transition everybody from indoors to outdoors.
Yeah, exactly. So that holistic approach to design is actually been driving me for the last 30 years as well, and I appreciate and respect that the fact that you've identified that, which again, your background sort of just leads you that way anyway. But design is definitely not. Well, do you want a straight line or would you like a curved line, Mr. Client? You know, I mean, it really is the holistic, the entire complete environment of everything that you see. You know, David Tischerman used to say this all the time. He would say, if somebody walks into the backyard and says, "Oh, what a great pool," he felt like he failed at what he had done. But if you just walk into the backyard and it just feels good to be there, then you've done your job well, I think. So, yeah, I admire the holistic approach for sure.
Yeah, I grew up in a house with tall ceilings and a lot of glass. A lot of light came in, and a number of years ago, I bet it was, 8 or 9 years ago, I was running in the woods and thinking about architecture, because that's what I do. I think about design, and it occurred to me that, you know, having 8-foot ceilings, 9-foot ceilings, 10-foot ceilings, or 25-foot ceilings, these things affect who we are and how we think and how we process our daily events. So I decided that in everything we do, I want a person to look forward to coming home and kind of long for getting back to home when they leave for work. I want them to feel like this is the best place in their life, the place that inspires them to just be there. And whether it's a calming environment or an edgy environment, you know, that's driven around the client, right? You know, some people are just too laid back and they need something edgy in their life. And so maybe we lean to a color palette to energize them, or maybe people are just way too wound up and they really need a calm, sensual place to just relax and forget about the world. And so I like to inquire with the client. It's not just a location-driven item. I believe that the client is very integral to the design process.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And again, you know, I travel the world in this design world, in this design of water feature world, and you know, that's always the first thing that when the client says, "I've seen something, I'd like to pursue this with you. What's the next step?" And that's what you just said is my first statement. We need to meet. And
exactly.
and then second statement is I've got to experience the space. And it's not that I need a vacation to fly away to these faraway lands where you are. I just got to experience the space in order to provide the proper service. So it sounds like you're of the same mind.
Absolutely. And I remember maybe 15 years ago, I had a client that wanted us to build a rose garden in the back of this enormous estate that I kind of grew up around. And so I was honored to be able to do this. And I was a little stumped, and I just said to her, look, I need to go spend some time over there. And so I went and got a really nice bottle of red wine and went over there in the backyard on a cool fall day, and I finished that bottle, man, and and came away with an incredible plan, and she was excited, So sometimes that's what it takes, Sometimes you gotta step off the edge a little bit to
yeah, go get drunk in your client's backyard. That's what I do.
Well, what's interesting was, on any given day, God, a bottle would be hard to drink, but I was so jazzed, and I don't think I felt that bottle at all. It was just that the juices were flowing, and it just became part of the design, and so maybe it made me more fluid, maybe it didn't, maybe it helped tone me down. I don't know, but it's a fun memory anyway.
Yeah. So speaking of that, and again, it just you're kind of helping me recollect how my process works as well. And so I tend to, go from that initial environmental influence, if you will, that receiving the space and making it part of your mind and your own vernacular. And now you've got to carry this forward and create something. Now take me back to the drawing room, if you will, the design table, whatever it is. I tend to spend a little time listening to classical music, and I love to do that whenever I draw. I never listen to classical music any other time except when I draw. So do you have any particular vices or things that stimulate you?
I do, man. If I need to really focus on something, I put on some Philip Glass, just some really intense modern classical music. It's funny that you lean back to that. When I was in school, I always listened to some of the more classic stuff, Chopin and Vivaldi, especially Vivaldi. It really helped me study. It was nice. It almost creates a sense of deep concentration as opposed to wordy music. I definitely listen to music a bit when I draw.
Yeah, Vivaldi though makes me want to have sex. It's like Vivaldi gets me up and running, but now Beethoven is more of a thinking classical music for me. I mean, that's more meditative, if you will. So I'm just surprised that you picked Vivaldi. That's interesting.
Well, it was all of the above in the school days, but now the go-to is Philip Glass, man. It's deep thinking, deep, edgy stuff. I was turned on to him by a really close friend of mine who's a marble sculptor. And he sent me a clip, a video of him carving, and I heard it in the background. What the hell is that, man? And so I didn't know. I'd never heard of him. And so we talked a little bit about that, and I immediately turned it on, and wow, it's intense. Now, so I have an associate in my office with me, and so she has to listen to that too. but it's good, or if she doesn't want to hear what I'm listening to, she puts her headphones on, and vice versa. So it works out.
So tell me about the application, then. So are you working in pencil, graphite, paints, or watercolors, or are you working in computer software?
Computer. In the early days, it was all the rudimentary stuff, right? The original old school pencil drafting, watercolors, color pencils. I didn't do a lot of watercolor, but touched on it. But a lot of color pencils and just graphite or piece of paper. If I didn't have a smudging tool, a piece of paper, I'd twist it up and turned into a smudging tool. Whatever it took to get the job done. So having education in art certainly gave me those basic skill sets, right? And so even perspective drawing, like the classes you teach, that's all second nature to me because I've been doing it since I was a kid. And which reminds me, anytime I think of you and your class or your perspective drawing class, I think of your chair that you ask people to draw, and then you flip it upside down and ask them to draw that. And I think it's a great exercise. I love it. I know I'm digressing here, completely derailing your question, but it's just every time I think of Mike Nantz, I think of an upside down chair.
Well, now every time I think of you with a bottle of wine in somebody's backyard just getting blitzed. So I mean,
well, as long as the chair is not upside down, the chair I'm sitting in is not upside down, I'll be okay, right? That may be the end game.
I think it was a bottle of wine that gave me the upside down chair idea to begin with. So we have something in common. But
that's awesome.
No,
that's awesome.
No, the reason why I was asking, what's your method or medium that you use to bring your ideas forward is because of the background in art that you described to me, and as again to hijack this a little bit and make it a little bit about me, I have done that very thing. I've done what you said. I've gotten away from the art tools and spending more time in the computer because it's not because it's faster, better, easier. It's just a way of communication in the modern world of business. And I was doing it just yesterday. I'm sitting in St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands, for the last week, and I've done 3 go-to-meeting conferences online already this week, and I couldn't do that I guess I could with a pencil and paper, but it's much more efficient, and everybody gets to see it. We can make revisions and do all this stuff with the computer, and so I can work from anywhere. However, all that said, and again, bringing it right back to you, I miss my tools. I am making myself use my tools more now. I'm using more marker. I'm using more watercolor. Just in the last 6 months, I've really started to push myself in that direction. So I urge you, don't get too far away from those tools because there's a creative aspect to those that is just tapped by those things in your hand that a mouse in your hand just doesn't do. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Well, there's no doubt about that. Those things are essential. So they live on my desk. They live in my bag that I carry with me. So no matter where I go, if you run into me somewhere, whether it's an ACI convention, an ASA meeting, or a Genesis class, or anywhere, if you say, "Hey, man, do you have a pencil on you?" I can whip one out, and I have a smudger usually, and a highlighter, and a little color, and a nice pen. At least the essentials, right? So, having those skills is important. I remember being on a project in Roatan. It's an island off the coast of Honduras where I showed up with my laptop, and I had to do a lot of fast drafting, and you can't see the laptop outside, and I had to translate these images to, a workforce of 40 guys that speak Spanish. And so I would find myself hand drafting a lot. I would spend hours every day hand drafting, and that is the advantage of a computer where you can simply hit rotate and spin things around and be able to show somebody something in intricate detail. And so that's kind of where we find ourselves now. Fast forward to the future. I went from hand drafting to any form of CAD modeling, whether it was SketchUp or Pool Studio, and then AutoCAD. And then I realized that for us, at least my perspective, using building information modeling software such as Revit, an Autodesk product. That's not an Autodesk ad, by the way.
Yeah.
So people know, hey, Revit, what is Revit? Well, Revit's kind of like AutoCAD, but it's 3D, and it tells you everything you want to know about the project. And so I realized that that's really the future of design. And the architecture community, the engineering community already knows this. They've known this for a long time. BIM stuff is the wave of the future. However, in swimming pool design, it sort of lags behind a little bit. And so I think part of that is because it's really hard to learn. If people think AutoCAD's hard, they should jump into a Revit program. It's stiff. It has a really steep learning curve. And so I started using Revit and realized that, wow, okay, this is cool. I understand it. I can do it. But I am also a business owner, I also do other things in my business. Drafting is not my sole responsibility within this organization. So we hired a draftsman, and that was a great step for us. We were able to bring in skills that were far beyond mine. I brought in a young lady named Anna. You may have met her. If not, you'll meet her in New Orleans. She's an amazing draftsman and draftsperson. And so I'm mentoring her in design while she's doing the brunt of the work, And so what happens here is we get a collaboration, and we love collaboration. I like collaborating with outside organizations, with other architects and designers and builders, even, everybody, and the homeowner for that matter. But internally, we collaborate. So she'll create the rudimentary, the layout, and then I go back to the pencil. And it might even be a digital pencil on my phone, right? I might just take a stylus out and draw on the phone, send it back to her because I'm not always in the office. And then she runs with it, kicks it back to me, and there's this play back and forth. And we tweak a design all the way to the finished project that we're ready to say, here, client, this is the finished concept that we would like to present to you. So that's how it goes. And there is still hand drawing in my world, without a doubt.
Great. Yeah, you just don't want to lose it. It's easy to do, and like I said, I've done it through experience and just not quit drawing. I still draw as a hobby. I still have things that little artsy and craftsy things that I keep going, that keep me going and kind of satisfy that aspect of my world. But I'm just seeing it more and more in the various presentations that we do in the various offices that I walk into. The younger architects are not very skilled with a pencil. I've done it multiple times now where I've gone into a large architectural firm, and the old guys are slinging lead, and the young guys are just sort of standing back and watching, and whenever you push the pad over in front of them, they kind of resist it. They really don't want to do that because it's not a mouse, it's a pencil, and they're a little afraid of it, even though I think it's a prereq within their curriculum that they have to draw. But again, my point about that is that I would just hate to see it become a lost art in the world of architectural design or swimming pool design or whatever, residential design, whatever label you want to tag to it. There's just way too much computer influence in my opinion. And I don't know if you share that opinion or not, but Revit I don't do. I work in SketchUp. So, but I have seen Revit and you're right. And I've toyed with it. It's complicated, but the overall aspect of creating that initial concept of bringing something forward with, or bringing that idea forward into on a two-dimensional plane with a pencil there's just something creative about that for me anyway, and I think that it's waning a bit in our industry, and I'm worried about it.
Well, and you can't get away from the reality that in a few minutes you can sketch an entire project it may be very rough and rudimentary, or it may be very refined depending on your prospective drawing skills. But in a few minutes, you can lay down the fundamental geometry of an entire project with a pencil. And I don't think that's possible in a computer. And I've seen really fast drafting happen, ninja skills, right? And I just don't think you can really kick that down that fast. And even micro details, hey, what do I do about this particular union of a Lautner edge and a staircase on a swimming pool where we want water to run down it? Okay, here's how I would do that. Boom, boom, boom. And then it goes into the computer. And after you stumble around with it in the computer, you can spin it around. And here's the advantage of the computer. You get to spin it around and look for, rather than having to draw 8 different angles by hand, now the computer, all you have to do is rotate. So I think the hand's really quick for getting the idea on paper, getting the idea laid out, and it not just be some random abstract thought in the designer's head, but the computer does. It leverages that. It takes it to places you can never imagine, and I like that aspect of the computer. And so we very much embrace technology for our part. We do topographical surveys for all projects if we can, even simple flat yard projects, because they might have a garden bed that's sacred, or a patio, or an existing structure. And all this data collection and input, and it's just so easy. You go out there and collect it with surveying instruments, and then bring it into the computer, lay it out, and now you know where your real canvas is. And then when we draw in the computer, we can take it back out into the field, put it right back into that same instrument, and lay out the project, and never get a tape measure out. The days of triangulation and 2 tape measures and a couple pieces of rebar or some pins, those are gone. We don't do that.
Yeah.
If it's a simple, quick, straight line, hey, is that 6 feet? Yeah, we got it. Tape measure, right? But by and large, we don't even put up form boards to excavate. We lay it out with spray paint and a surveying tool, dig the hole, then form, then check the forms with the surveying tool, then steel, check the steel, then shoot. And if it's complicated, we might be, at least on 2 occasions, we've been present on Gunite Day with surveying equipment, making sure tolerances are tight enough that we don't have to do too much rendering or tweaking on a shell, because it was a tight tolerance project. So it's we love technology, but man, as you said, I'm never giving up the pencil. It's too handy.
Yeah, well, that's cool. So do you have any particular projects that are just really kind of jazzing up those creative juices right now? Anything on the drawing board that's got you excited?
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't know if I should talk about them or if I should wait to unveil them as they come to fruition. We're doing some things to push the envelope of what we do with the water once we get past the vanishing edge. Why does the outside have to be tile or stone? So we are working on a lot of designs that, and a few in particular, that really just change what we think about with water. And I think the driving force there is, Mike, man, every pool we somehow gets categorized as linear or curvilinear, and no, that is just a big broad stroke categorization, right? But why can't we be thinking in terms of let's create some art forms out here? And so not everybody wants an art form; they just want a pool to play in, and that's cool. But we want to kind of get back to our roots. For me, my roots, and that is art. It's using water, steel, glass, stone, concrete. It's using all these materials, a porcelain, whatever it is, but it's using them differently. And so that's kind of where we're heading, generally speaking, with design. And if it's draw me a square meal deal in the backyard, sure, we'll kick out on something simple, but that's not where our heart is. Our heart is in pushing the envelope.
Yeah, and I love that aspect of it. It's the same approach that I carry to design. I had an editor call one time and talk to me about some things that I was doing, and she said, your stuff doesn't really, I'm looking at all these different images of things that you've produced, and it doesn't really fit in a category. It's not easy to define or to recognize, that's one of your jobs, because they're so diverse. And I guess that could be taken, badly or as a compliment, either way. But no, I've never been one to like. And that's the other question I get too is what about the trends? What about the trends in the industry? What trends do you see that are hot right? I don't know. I do what the site tells me to do. The site speaks to me, and that's what I kind of work with. And exactly like you're talking about, taking those materials, those finishes, those textural elements, and blending them with all these various colors that are out and available. I think that's more the artistic approach as opposed to, hey, I do great perimeter overflows and you're going to get one whether you like it or not. That's not
right.
That's not design. Now, if a client, and I'm with you, if a client says that we need a rectangle in the backyard because my husband wants to do lap lanes or a lap swimming, but you know what I always do is I always take that, and do you do the same thing, I guess is the question. I always take that and say, well, great, yeah, lap doesn't necessarily mean rectangle. Could I create an amorphic blob of a shape in your backyard and have a straight line in there somewhere with two walls there parallel to one another, so you can do flip turns, whatever, but they could be 70 feet away from each other and still be a straight line without a rectilinear shaped swimming pool. And oftentimes when I say something like that, you see the light go off in their head, and can you do that? Well, sure. As you said, with an artistic approach, we can create anything that meets with not only your not I wouldn't wanted to say logistics, but the what's the term where you interface with stuff? Okay, well I just lost the term. Anyway,
you lost the term. That's okay.
Yeah. The ergonomics. That's what I was trying to say. So something
Perfect.
that's ergonomically, fits your flip turn, for instance. We can make that work in any shaped swimming pool. Given the site, and so, but it sounds exactly that's what you do, is you let the site sort of speak to you, and then you think in terms of an artistic approach to the water and the water shape and the finishes and materials and colors and yada, yada, yada. It just is a much better approach, in my opinion.
Well, I think the driving force for me is what I would call my design principle, and I don't mean that in the sense that I own this. It's just what drives me, and that is where, say, you take someone like Frank Lloyd Wright, who believed that a structure should fit its natural setting. I believe that a structure should fit its cultural setting also. So, for example, I find it painstaking to see a McMansion in a country rural side setting, where a McMansion in a neighborhood setting's fine, all day long, whatever. That's there. I have no qualms with that. But take a setting where we see nothing but tobacco barns and smoke houses and agricultural sheds, and then put a big brick house out there. It doesn't work. And so the same thing applies to me for water features. It's a design principle for me, and it is our driving design principle. The structure has to fit the culture. So it in the case of outdoor living, what we're building, what we're designing, has to not only look good with the house, it has to complement the architecture of the house. It needs to fit the setting. So placing a big sheet of black glass, as you suggested, a great perimeter overflow pool in a courtyard setting with the wrong house doesn't make sense. You can put $1 million pool beside a house that it doesn't fit with, and it doesn't make sense at all. And that same house could have been complemented and accented by having a different style pool there. And so there is and I'm not going to call this a trend. There's a trend of raising the level of the water, right? That's great. I love it. Anything we can do to get the reflection up. But there's a fad of let's put a black perimeter overflow pool everywhere. And I'm not on board with that. I want to design any structure to fit the culture, to fit the house, to fit the personality of the people swimming in it, and to fit the house they live in. So even if their personality says, hey man, I'm modern and artsy and I want this pool, if they're in a red brick house, it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. And so I'm with nothing against red brick houses. I love, red brick houses are great. We're surrounded by them in the Southeast, but there are certain homes that certain pool designs don't work in. And so I want to be sure that as we draw, we do try to complement the house, and we look at the color palette, we look at the shape, we look at the personality of the client. So all that goes into play there. And again, the driving principle is letting the culture help design the project.
Yeah. So, and I want to ask you a little bit more about the what you specifically mean of culture, but first and foremost, what do you? I feel this way about my abilities and my overall design integrity, I guess. So whenever the client says, yeah, so what, we have red brick, and so what, we're very traditional, even a plantation style house or whatever it might be, but we still want that perimeter overflow and still want that glassy tabletop look in our backyard, and we still want it black. So there you go, Mr. Designer. Give us what we want. Do you arm wrestle that client, or do you try to meet those needs, or do you walk the job because you're so damn set in your ways?
No, I definitely try to work with. I mean, if someone wants to hire us to do work, I want to perform. I want to come up with something that fits their needs and desires. And at the same time, still be good design. Still. I want to take a challenge. I'm not afraid of a challenge. So, having said that, if the wrong wish list comes across my table, I'll just walk. We're not interested. We have turned down work. We will say, look, that just doesn't jive with our personality. And that's a hard thing to do. It's really hard to say no to someone who wants to pay you money to work for them. But, if they just want you to do something that doesn't fit your design principles or your life principles, then you have to be willing to say no. At least that's what I think. So I'll work with something to answer your question, I'll work with it as long as it does fit our design principles. But yeah, I would dig my heels in at some point and turn work down if it's just not the right fit. And that's not because I'm trying to be obstinate about it. It's just because, well, I think kind of like Shakespeare said, we design our own lives. We design our world. We, in the end, are who we've created. And so if I don't want to be something and I don't want to draw something that doesn't fit my view of the world, then I have to be willing to turn that down.
Well, and that's a good answer, and that's what I was hoping you would say, because again it fits my design philosophy as well, and again I simply call it design integrity. There are things that. There are things that should be together, and there are things that should not be together that don't work visually, and I really wouldn't want to sign that, at the end of the day. And have I built things before that maybe don't belong in my I don't want them to be in my portfolio. I don't want anybody to see that. Yeah, sure. I think we've all been there, but just having that design integrity, and I find this too. Oftentimes, the client will appreciate that at times and allow you a little bit more levity beyond, what maybe they have specifically requested. All right, Ryan. So, earlier we had talked about these basic design elements and ideas and design integrity, and so you had mentioned that the design has to meet the culture. And I have to admit, maybe the term that I've never used or quite completely understand. Could you expound on your meaning and intent of design culture?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, without consulting, jump into a dictionary of what we typically think of as culture. I think a lot of people get sort of tied into the idea that a culture is where you come from or your social ways. And where that is true, when it comes to the arts, culture is also about pattern. A culture is, I guess, to put it this way, if you live in a neighborhood where all of the houses are similar, that is a culture that you live in. Or it could be an ideology. Maybe you live in a liberal town or a conservative town. you live in that culture. It's a liberal culture, a conservative culture. And so when it comes to designing in your yard, I like to think of the culture as looking at the broader picture. So let's bring in ideology if we have to. Let's look at, where does a person live? Let's look in particular, as we narrow down to the micro, their neighborhood, their house, all the way down to the fence in the backyard. Is it a wooden fence or a brick fence or an aluminum fence? So the culture of where when I use the term culture as a principle of design, I'm completely referring to the pattern that we're used to. So again, back to my analogy about the brick house on the side of the road in the rural environment. Well, that doesn't fit with the rural vernacular. So vernacular would be another way to say the culture, right? It is our local culture. So that's, maybe I should say I design with the vernacular in mind, but I like culture. I think it's a better word, and I think it's a little more encompassing.
Yeah, no, I got it. I see where you're headed with that now, and it's making more sense. Again, there's probably 10, maybe 15 years between our ages, and so culture was always a part of my world growing up, and the various things. I just didn't know it. We just didn't call it the culture, if you will. So, but I see how it does apply to design, and what, and at least in what your meaning is, and how it would be applicable. Because I think there is a cultural piece. I've run across something recently where, water conservation, for instance, is probably more prevalent in Southern California than it is in Texas, for instance, or maybe from where you are. And so if a client says to me, I'm moving from Southern California to Texas and we want to do what we did in California, again, that would be kind of a cultural influence there, and I would need to consider those types of things. And so it's making more sense to me now. Yeah.
Well, and to touch on that, that's where an external culture is going to have an influence on an internal culture. And so where I would certainly take that external culture and have it as a component of the design because it's important to the client. In point, what I'm really focused on is the internal culture. I want to look at that scene, that setting, and make sure that where they are fits the picture, right? So easily put, I don't want to put a modern house in the middle of a bunch of classic houses, or vice versa, right? It doesn't make sense. It stands out. It's off-putting. So I believe that things need to blend in. So it's we don't want to put a palm tree in the middle of an Appalachian forest. It just doesn't fit. It's just not. It's not the local culture, and so that's where I go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you touched on it earlier too when you spoke of culture being one of the design principles. So again, I think it is another way of interpreting and articulating, or just semantics of the principles of design and the virtual elements of design that you use, and in good design principles, period. So I got it. All right, cool. You're in North or South Carolina? I forget.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
I reside in Chapel Hill, Michael Jordan. It's a great place to live. I love it here. No, I think we've really hit it all. I mean, anybody that knows me, I talk to a lot of builders every day across the Southeast, and all these guys know that I can go on and on. And I thought it would be interesting for you and I to have this conversation, because I think you and I could talk for days. So somewhere we have to draw a line in the sand and draw closure. So
well, it's called passion and what it is that we do, and I see it in you. And I've not known you for all that many years. I can't remember how long it is, but I've been a Genesis guy, for instance, for 30 years, and a pool. Well, I shouldn't say that, 20 years, and then a pool guy for 30 years, and so. I've known a lot of folks in this industry, and you're definitely in that unique position of being that one like we spoke of earlier, the one that's able to implement, a gunite guy, for God's sake, with a background in art. That's amazing in and of itself. So you've kind of got this broad spectrum in our industry, but it seems like you're just hitting on all 8 cylinders and just rocking what it is that you do. And so, I'm damn proud to know you.
Well, I appreciate it. This is definitely an electric motor driving this brain, man. But it's an exciting time, Mike. I've delved 22 years deep into this almost at this point, and yeah, I'm passionate about it. I love it. I certainly wouldn't do it. It's too hard to do this if you don't love it. So I think I speak for myself as well as the others in our company. It's we do it because we love it, man. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's Ryan Oaks.
Yeah, cool. All right, brother. Well, I think that's it. That's all I've got. So great talking to you. Thanks for taking time to sit down for this visit, and I look forward to seeing the great things that you're going to do in the future, and just seeing you personally again in New Orleans. So thanks again, and take care, brother.
Great. Likewise. Thanks, Mike. We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to the Ask the Masters podcast, and don't forget to check out our Facebook page each week on Tuesdays for new episodes of the show. I also want to encourage you to stop by the Ask the Masters Facebook page and invite other like-minded individuals to join us there as well. Feel free to jump into the conversations and even post your own questions. We want to create a community which fosters learning and discovery for the betterment of us all. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. Please be sure to subscribe and feel free to share